career banker. I've been a banker all my life, having started banking at Standard Chartered Bank, where I rose to a very senior rank before I joined FBC. And from FBC, I then came to the central bank. The role of a central bank is to maintain exchange rate and price stability, and also ensure that inflation is under control. My vision is to do exactly that. I want to see a stable currency. I want to see a currency which can trade and be exchangeable with other currencies. I want to see a currency whose exchange rate is not volatile. What requires urgent attention in the Zimbabwean financial sector is to arrest the fluctuation in the exchange rate, which is what we have done by introducing the new structured currency, ZiG. Prior to the introduction of ZiG, we were seeing exchange rates moving on a daily basis, and at the time we introduced ZiG, the exchange rate had gone up to as high as 33,000 and was still going up. We then decided that we needed to stop that and introduced a currency which is stable and which is anchored on gold and other precious minerals, as well as foreign exchange balances that we have. For a currency to be stable, it has to be anchored on reserves. Previously, we did not have enough reserves to cover the amount of money that was circulating in the economy. So when we introduced ZiG, the first thing we did was to make sure that we had enough by way of reserves. And at the time we introduced ZiG, we had over 100 million US dollars in nostro balances held by the central bank, and we also had 2.5 tons of gold, which, as you may recall, we unveiled to the public in the presence of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe. The new currency has already been introduced. It was introduced on the 5th of April when we announced the monetary policy statement. On that day, we converted all RTGS balances into ZiG. So if you go to your bank today, you find that your balance has been converted to ZiG. The next stage is now to introduce the notes and coins. Exactly. And these are the ones that are going to be introduced on the 30th of April. The money has already been printed, it is there, but before issuing to the public, we have to make sure that we have undertaken an extensive education campaign so that people understand the features of the new currency, so that we avert situations where some unscrupulous people can cheat people by giving them fake ZiG notes, fake ZiG coins. So this process is ongoing. We are being assisted by the Ministry of Information and Publicity, and we've also got our own teams going out in the regions. We are going to be on all radio stations. We are also even going to be in your newspaper, the Sunday Mail, and all other newspapers circulating in this country. We will give the notes and coins to the banks, who will then pay out to their customers. Remember, we said for those who are holding pawn notes in cash, they can go and surrender them at their banks in exchange for notes and coins in ZiG. We will print and mint enough notes and coins to satisfy the needs of the market. That I can assure you. ZiG is a stable currency. If you have been watching developments of late, since we introduced ZiG on the 5th of April, it has been trading now for over a week, and every day it has been strengthening, mainly influenced by the increase in price of gold. So if you have a currency that is anchored on a valuable commodity like gold, definitely it is bound to strengthen and be stable. It is true that previously there was a facility offshore that was backing the Zimbabwe dollar, but over time that facility was overtaken by the amount of money that was in circulation. At the time that was announced, the amount of money that was circulating in the market was equal to or below the value of the facility. But due to certain disturbances in the economy, we ended up with more money compared to the cover that we held. But going forward, and as we said, we are starting with cover worth 285 million US against currency in circulation of about 80 million US. So at the time of commencement of ZiG, we are already more than 3 times covered. And we have made an undertaking in the monetary policy statement that we will not increase the amount of ZiG in circulation beyond the amount of cover that we have. So any increase in the amount of ZiG will be made by a concomitant increase in the reserves that we are holding. Yeah, in fact, that is the problem, one of the problems which ZiG is intended to address. 1 ZiG is equal to plus or minus 6 US cents. But we are going to split the ZiG further into smaller denominations. Quarter ZiG, half ZiG, so that people can get change, so that there is divisibility in the currency. So the introduction of ZiG is actually addressing the problem that we are mentioning. The multi-currency arrangement is in place until 2030. There is a statutory instrument to that effect. Currently, it is estimated that 80% of the transactions, or even 85% of the transactions happening in this economy are in US dollars. The balance of 20 or 15% is in local currency. Our roadmap envisages a situation where we will increase demand for ZiG to an extent where, as we go towards 2030, the ratio of US dollars to Zim dollars, or to ZiG circulating in this economy will change. For example, if we can end this year at 70% US dollars and 30% ZiG, and then we go into next year and we are at 60% US dollars and 40% ZiG, maybe by 2026 we will be at 50-50. And when we get to 50-50, people will be indifferent as to which currency they are using. How are we going to ensure that there is demand for ZiG? Government has agreed that all tax payments on quarterly payment dates will be paid 50% in ZiG and 50% in other currencies. That way, you will see increased demand for ZiG because companies will now be exchanging their US dollars for ZiG so that they can pay tax. The measures that we put in the monetary policy statement are meant to control inflation. If you are going to have a currency which is stable, it means that inflation will be contained. If the exchange rate for ZiG to the US dollar is strengthening, it actually means that prices should go down instead of going up. And our fear actually is not inflation, but rather deflation. In the monetary policy statement, we reduced interest rates to as low as a maximum of 20% per annum. If you recall, interest rates were as high as 130% prior to the monetary policy statement. We think that should encourage banks to lend to their customers for productive purposes. We don't want to encourage borrowing for consumptive purposes, but for productive purposes. The central bank has already started embarking on an extensive financial inclusion program. As we speak right now, we've got our teams in the regions conscientizing people on the need to bank, and with the introduction of a stable, strong currency, people should now start saving their money in ZiG. We have also encouraged banks to introduce KYC light accounts you understand that if you are a married woman and the house you live in is registered in your husband's name and the electricity bill is coming in your husband's name, you cannot have proof of residence because there is no utility bill that is in your name. So we say to banks that they must open KYC light accounts where some of those requirements are waived so that we can encourage women to also open bank accounts and bank. You will also notice that in the monetary policy statement, we ordered banks not to charge bank charges on balances below $100 or equivalent in ZiG. That way, we want to use that to encourage people to bank their money because monies were being eroded by bank charges, and by introducing that move, we are actually creating a situation where people can leave their money in the bank and find it there when they come back. As RBZ, we have introduced a stable currency, and when a country is operating using a stable currency, there will be confidence. Also, as RBZ, we have ensured that the banking sector is safe and sound. We don't have any troubled banks, and therefore the public out there should feel free to go and bank with any bank of their choice. The FIU goes out in the market to monitor corporates as they trade. ZiG is our currency, ZiG is legal tender, and shops, companies, businesses should invoice or price their goods in either US dollars or ZiG because we are in a multi-currency environment. But where we see companies deliberately refusing to accept ZiG, obviously FIU are bound to take action. And such action includes freezing accounts, and also some corporates may have been fined.